Well, here we are again. It's episode 5 of the Suppress Herald. It's the week of the 9th of, actually, the end of the week of the 9th of October, 2023. And we've got a Suppress Herald really good week this week. They're doing a really good job on suppressing what you should hear and spreading lies like they do. So we're going to get started. I did the usual scoring for the week, and we do Tuesday through Sunday. They don't have a paper on Mondays. And the local Suppress Herald here in Portland, Maine, in the editorial page, were true to form, very much so. We had 25 liberal letters to the editor and editorial on the editorial pages. We had 5 conservative letters, and I thought we were off to a strong start on Tuesday. They had 2 conservative letters that they published, but that didn't last, and they averaged less than one a day. And they had 9 neutral letters just on general stuff. And there you have it. It's another week with the Suppress Herald, true to form, 5-1 liberal letters to conservative letters. I'm going to talk today about a specific local issue that we've been dealing with. This is very personal because it's in the town I live in, the town of Scarborough. The very liberal people that run the town are putting to the voters a $160 million bond, most of which is to pay for a brand new spanking K through 3 unified, they call it, unified school. What's a unified school? That means you jam all the kids into one school instead of taking 3 neighborhood schools that they say are old and overcrowded and need to be replaced. And it's just not cost effective to do that. So you got to build a new school, and they're going to put it all in one place in the center of town. And it's a very unpopular move that they're doing. Some of the counselors even have been quoted in the papers of saying that, yeah, I know it's not really organized. We don't have a really good idea. This is not really great, but we're going to put it to the voters anyway. And overwhelmingly, I think the voters are not supporting this. But it's kind of interesting in the papers. This is very much a liberal cause to put all the students, put children all in one place so they can keep an eye on them, and to spend taxpayers' money on building these Taj schools, overbuilt and overcost. And it's what I call part of the municipal industrial complex, where, why does a school cost 4 to 6 times as much per square foot than a state of the art office building? Well, it's because it's not their money. Private developers, private companies do things differently, obviously. It's their money. So what we have here, I just wanted to highlight this a little bit. You've got, letters to the editor for the entire week. And we had on Thursday, we've got Scarborough in need of public school investment, and all in favor of this massive big school and the strategic solution. That's one. Then you have on Saturday's paper, you have Scarborough plan as good as it gets. Oh, yeah, I'm sure it is. Faced with a decision that calls for us to support what the town and school believe is the best solution to address the multifaceted and complex challenges of our students and staff. Yeah. Blow $160 million, borrow it now with interest rates higher than they've been, and a real problem here, and very little support. But you wouldn't see that addressed here in the Suppress Herald. And then they do give the Scarborough director of facilities, the Scarborough Public Schools director of facilities, an entire editorial section. Pay now for new Scarborough School or pay later as deferred costs come due. Yep. Fear, fear, fear. Give me my big new school or else. And this is called fiefdom building. This is the head of the facilities, obviously, and he wants, hopefully, I think he probably goes to bed at night dreaming of his name across the entrance of this big new school. And it's fiefdom building at its worst, but it's very much human nature. We shouldn't be surprised by it, but it's something that here in the suppressed Herald, you see nobody writing about the negative, nobody talking about what people are saying that are not supporting it, and they don't publish letters from people that are not supporting it, because this is what liberals like to do: build big new schools and jam all the kids in one place so they can keep an eye on them and keep the parents out. You know, security is about keeping parents out because they're terrorists, right? So there we are. That's where we are right here in Scarborough. It's local and it's real. So that's one of the big issues that's going on the ballot shortly. And I have a gut feeling that regardless of overwhelming editorial support and media support for this bad idea, that the people know better and they're going to shoot it down. We'll find out. It's only a couple weeks away. Moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about just, headlines and the way they are painting things in the paper. And again, I've said many times, politics is local and so is propaganda. And, here we have a editorial writer from the Chicago Tribune that's in this paper regularly and with his rants. And, this is a headline in the opinion section. And it's just really, this is just disgusting stuff. Trump's latest anti immigrant rhetoric, straight from Hitler. His recent fact free assault invokes a theme poisoning the blood of our country right out of the dictator's manifesto. This is putting words in Trump's mouth. He didn't say poisoning the blood of our country. He said that these foreign countries are emptying their jails and sending them to our country. And he's been proven to be right. We're not getting the best and brightest. There's no question of that. And yet, this entire editorial is just basically makes Trump out to be a Nazi. Trump's latest anti-immigrant rhetoric straight from Hitler. Let me tell you, Mr. Editorial Writer, this whole country is feeling the impact of an open border and tens of millions of people coming to our country, don't have two dimes to rub together, and they're showing up and they have to be housed and clothed and fed, and they're overwhelming our systems, even in places like New York, Chicago. Remember the sanctuary cities. Well, those sanctuary cities are not all that happy because they're being overwhelmed. And this is the plan. And I'm going to talk more about in a later episode. I'm going to get into a little bit of Rules for Radicals. If you haven't read the book, you should, because you'd recognize a lot of what's going on in this country. And I'm going to touch on that. And all I'm going to do is quote a few lines in that book, and it will resonate like there's no tomorrow. So moving on, I think one of the funniest articles in the paper this week. This was in this Sunday. Sunday was quite a paper. I've got several stories here that really highlight the whole propaganda thing with the paper. And this is Press Herald wins top awards in annual Maine Press Association judging. The Maine Press Association. Let me see. The people that own the Portland Press Herald and Maine Sunday Telegram also own virtually every single paper in the state of Maine. So common ownership for it all. And they write a whole article about the awards they won. This is just so specious. It's beyond belief. And we're gonna just pat ourselves on the back. It was quite a competition. Woo! It's one newspaper group that owns it all, and they have awards. I'll just toss that one aside. It's just so ridiculous. But people read it and they're like, "Oh wow, Portland Press Herald. They won. A couple guys won. A couple of reporters won awards. Great. It's just unbelievable." Moving on to more in the this is all in just a Sunday paper, and this is the one that a lot of people just sit around and read on a Sunday, and this is where you get an opportunity to really jam them up with some really good propaganda. This is an article in the World section of the Sunday paper. 40% of Antarctica's ice shelves are shrinking. Oh, 40% are shrinking. That's plays into the fear. The world's going to end. The ice is going to melt. The seas are going to rise. We're all going to die. But you have to read in a little bit, and that's the problem is the headlines is what most people get. That's how propaganda works. It does work because a lot of people just don't drill down in. They never ask questions. They never critically look at it or go further. But I do. And of course, this is from the Washington Post, which is another factor here in the Pingree Press Herald, formerly, who was a congresswoman whose husband bought the papers for a while. Now it's owned by George Soros and others that are buying papers across the country in the under the guise of a saving local papers. Yeah, they're saving them all right. They're saving them so that they can manipulate all the people's minds and massively propagandize the populace. So we have 40% of Antarctica's ice shelves are shrinking. Ice shelves play a critical role by slowing the flow of ice on land into the ocean by essentially acting as a wall. And here's the whole article. And I just highlighted a few lines here. Analyzing more than 100,000 satellite images from 1997 to 2021. So 23, 24 years worth of satellite images. Davison and his colleagues found that 71 of the 162 ice shelves surrounding Antarctica reduced in volume, less than half. Almost 50 lost more than 30% of their initial mass during those years. The team also found 29 shelves gained mass. Oh, wait a minute, 29 gained. And an additional 62 did not change mass significantly. So 91 out of 162 stayed the same or gained, and 71 lost. And this is catastrophic. They don't tell you what the total gain and loss, but they do. If you read down and you do get into this a little more clearly, a little more closely, and drill down, you can see a little bit more detail. Most ice shelves in East Antarctica, however, increased in volume or stayed the same. The East, Davidson said, is not as exposed to the warm water like the other side of the continent. Well, that kind of stands to reason, doesn't it? One side's warm, one side's cold. So one side's going to lose and the other side's going to gain. What they don't talk about or mention in here is the middle of Antarctica, where if you do your homework and do some digging, and you have to dig hard to find it, massively increasing thickness and density of ice in the central part of Antarctica. And obviously what will happen is over time, that ice in the middle of Antarctica will slide its way toward the sides and create new ice shelves. Let's not talk about that. The region is protected by a band of cold water at the coast, which helps keep nearby warm water at bay. Even so, the study still showed pockets of shrinking ice shelves, and researchers are still investigating the reasons. So they don't know. It's a story about nothing, but it's got a headline, and it furthers the agenda. And it's just something that is just tiresome if you look at this critically. This is also in the Sunday paper in World Nation. Sudden spike in global warmth is so extreme, it's mysterious. So now they don't know why it's happening, but boy, it's happening bad. Record warmth is to be expected as greenhouse gases heat up the planet. They don't know that greenhouse gases heat up the planet. It could be that water vapor, I guess you can call that if you want to be critical. Water vapor is a greenhouse gas, but they don't keep track of that. They just blame CO2. But there is no direct correlation with evidence that it's CO2 that's causing this. But nobody ever wants to talk about that. But there are 1,200 scientists that signed letters stating that we're overstating this and that we have to look at more things. So I just highlighted a few other lines here. But it's most atypically warm month in nearly 2 centuries of observations. It was 0.83 degrees above the old record for the month, a staggering departure from what was already extreme. 2 centuries. So we're basing our entire global warming narrative on 2 centuries. How old's the Earth and how long has weather been changing? 2 centuries is a very small period of time. This is the part that's really telling. No single factor, not human caused global warming, because they don't know human caused global warming, not a burgeoning El Nino weather pattern can immediately assume credit for such a drastic diversion from anything humans have ever seen before, scientists said. It is so far outside the realm of what has occurred, it creates a new conundrum that will take time for research to unpack. Well, I thought they had these models that just showed all this stuff. They tout those models every day. Well, this isn't part of the model? This is the problem here. Their models have failed to deliver on what they've promised for decades. You can go back, and Al Gore and others have told us that, we're all going to die. Ocasio-Cortez, recently we have 10 years, 20 years, whatever, that's come and gone. And the models are failing to deliver on what they promise. And so they're worthless. But we're going to decide major policy decisions, really realistically put billions of people into poverty by taking away gas, oil, and coal, which is energy. And energy is life. And yet, they admit here that the models didn't see this coming. They can't explain it. It is indeed hard to give a good and informed answer to why this is happening, possibly for the first time. It gets older and older and older. And then all the way at the end of the article, which a lot of people won't read, won't get to, this. Volcanic activity is often associated with cooling the earth. Eruptions release particles that reflect sunlight, providing tiny bits of shade and reducing solar radiation. But when the Hunga Tonga Hunga Happel undersea volcano erupted in 2022, scientists warned it could have a warming effect on the planet. That is because, unlike most eruptions, Hunga Tonga sent massive amounts of, get this, water vapor high into the atmosphere and even released it into space. So, water vapor, isn't that clouds? Couldn't that be a pretty big factor in global warming? And they say it right there. They let it out. Volcanoes, sunlight, the oceans, lakes, snow cover, frozen Great Lakes or not, all are going to affect how much water evaporates into the atmosphere. And as a result of that, how much cloud cover you're going to have. And there's this certain MIT professor who also won a Nobel Prize who raises this, but you're never going to see it in the Suppress Herald. And yet, MIT's right down the road. They could send a reporter down to talk to an MIT professor on a day trip, but they're not going to do that because it doesn't fit the narrative. We're going to continue to talk about global warming. And again, I'm not a denier that we are seeing climate change. Climate has been changing since the Earth was born and will continue to. But attributing it to man made global warming is a problem because the models don't work and there are so many unknowns, and they dismiss things like solar impacts in the sun, and they dismiss things like water vapor, which are two major factors that don't get put into a lot of the models, and therefore the models are worthless. And yet we're going to make decisions based on this worthless science. It gets old and it gets to be a problem. I'm going to finish with this. And it's been going on for, you know, since 2015, 2016, when Trump came on the scene. This has been the most egregious misinformation campaign and propaganda machine ever in my lifetime, where slandering one individual, President Donald Trump, and giving a pass to another individual, our esteemed President Biden and his son Hunter, and covering up Biden crime family, and yet accusing Trump of being a Russian spy and on and on. I don't need to go into all of it. But this paper, the Suppress Herald, printed hundreds and thousands of column inches of slander against Donald Trump that all turned out to be lies. And here we have investigations into Hunter Biden leading to ethical concerns about president, poll shows. Oh, geez, this is bad. Hunter's investigation is leading to concerns, but have no fear. The paper's going to take care of this. Associated Press. This is the art. This is the paragraph. Republicans have been investigating Hunter Biden for years, since his father was vice president. While questions have arisen about the ethics surrounding the Biden's family's international business, no evidence has emerged so far to prove that Joe Biden, in his current or previous office, abused his role or accepted bribes. Except that's a complete crock of crap. There is so much evidence coming out. There's a FBI, forget the number, 1030 document from a very reliable source that indicated, yeah, I'm getting upset, that indicated very clearly that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden took $5 million each from the head of Burisma to get the prosecutor who was looking into Burisma in Ukraine fired. And then Biden actually boasted about firing, getting that prosecutor fired. He also has gotten windfalls of millions and millions of dollars that he can't explain. Didn't come from his book deal because he didn't sell any books. Didn't come from his speeches because he didn't do that many speeches. He can't even read a teleprompter. You think they paid him $1 million a pop to do speeches? We can't find out that. We could if we really had a will to, but they're not going to. But here you have the paper saying no evidence of that. Kind of the same thing of them saying there's no evidence that an election was tainted in 2020. And yet, no evidence? There's evidence everywhere if you want to look, but not in this newspaper. That's the problem. The suppress Herald is suppressing evidence of the Biden crime family that's everywhere if you want to look. They had no problem printed unsubstantiated innuendo about Trump for years. And yet here we have investigations into the Bidens with plenty of people testifying that they got millions of dollars from China, from Ukraine, from Russia. Oh, nothing to see here. Don't believe your lying eyes. The paper just told you that there's no evidence. And so you're supposed to believe it. And with that, I'll finish another episode with this. Politics is definitely local, and propaganda is definitely also local. Have a good one.